Because of the great depth of the ocean, there are parts of the world that sunlight can barely reach. A place that's permanently dark, extremely cold, and has pressure strong enough to crush steel like a can. But despite those extreme conditions, there are creatures that not only survive, but also grow beyond the normal size. This is one of the most unique mysteries of the deep ocean, called deep sea gigantism. In the ordinary sea, many animals are small, but as their habitat gets deeper and deeper, there are some species that seem to become giants, creatures that would normally resemble simple crabs or sea insects, but in the depths of the ocean, they become monstrously large. Before we start, please like and subscribe to this video. It really means a lot to us content creators. Thank you. And now, let's begin. One of the best known examples is the giant isocarpus. If you've ever seen a small roly-poly or pill bug on the ground, it looks almost the same. The only difference is the deep sea version of this can grow up to almost half a meter long, like seeing a giant armored insect crawling on the seabed. According to marine biologists, these creatures live in the very deep parts of the Atlantic, Pacific, and Indian Oceans. They move slowly and can survive for a long time without food. Because resources are scarce at the bottom of the sea, their bodies have learned to conserve energy, but they're not the only ones. There's also the Japanese spider crab, a crustacean whose legs, when stretched out, are almost as long as a small car. At first glance, it looks like a creature from science fiction. It moves slowly along the ocean floor near Japan, using its long legs to search for food in the darkness. And even scarier than this is the colossal squid. It's not just an ordinary squid. It's one of the most mysterious predators in the deep ocean. It's extremely rare to see one alive because it lives at such great depths. According to researchers, the eye of the colossal squid is among the largest in the animal kingdom. It's even bigger than a basketball. That's important because there's almost no light deep under the sea. Being able to detect even the slightest movement or light is a huge survival advantage. In a world of permanent darkness, having bigger eyes means you have a better chance of spotting a predator or food before it's too late. But why do these creatures grow so big? Up to now, science still doesn't have a single answer. Some scientists believe that the extreme cold in the deep sea is a major factor. Because the metabolism of animals in cold water is slow, they live longer and keep growing for longer. Others say this is an effect of pressure and lack of food. Because it's so hard to find resources in the deep, having a large body might be an advantage to store energy and survive longer without eating. There's also a theory that because there are fewer predators in some parts of the deep ocean, some species had the chance to grow larger without much competition. But the truth is, there are still many parts of the ocean that we don't fully understand. According to NOAA and other ocean researchers, the percentage of the deep ocean that humans have actually explored is even smaller compared to its entirety. This means that there could still be creatures under the sea that we haven't seen until now. As human exploration technology reaches greater depths, we are discovering more and more that the deep sea is not just an empty darkness. It's a world where evolution itself seems to follow different rules. And in the silence of the deep ocean, there may still be giant creatures moving about that have never been seen by humans. The amphipods, which are usually only as small as a fingernail in shallow waters, can grow up to almost 30 centimeters in the Mariana Trench. They move together in the darkness, eating anything that falls to the seabed, including jellyfish that are affected by this strange phenomenon. There are species in the deep sea that can reach over 1 meter in width, slowly floating in the darkness like ghosts under the sea. The giant tube worms near hydrothermal vents are even more unique. They have no mouth or stomach, but they survive because of bacteria inside their bodies. Instead of hunting, they rely on chemical reactions, coming from the intense heat and toxic chemicals around them. They also use energy more slowly. In a place where food is scarce, that's a big advantage for surviving longer. Cold water also has more oxygen compared to warm water. And because larger bodies need more oxygen, the deep ocean can support these giant creatures without them running out of energy quickly. At depths reaching about 4 kilometers below the surface, the weight of the water is hundreds of times greater than the pressure we experience on land. In these conditions, it's like you're being crushed by an enormous weight from all directions. On the surface, this would be impossible for humans or most animals to withstand. But in the deep sea, this isn't unusual. It's normal. In fact, according to marine scientists, this extreme pressure may be one of the reasons why larger bodies are favored in this kind of environment. In small organisms, their surface is more exposed compared to the inside of their bodies. That's why each cell feels the effects of external forces more strongly. But in larger bodies, the distribution of pressure is more balanced. That's why their internal structure is more stable. This is also where a long-observed biological pattern in cold regions comes into play. Larger animals are more effective at retaining heat compared to smaller ones. In a place where the temperature is almost freezing, even a small advantage in heat retention can provide a higher chance of survival. But no matter how stable the body or how efficient the biology, there is still a bigger limitation to life under the sea. Food. On the surface of the ocean, life is powered by the sun. Microscopic plants in the sea produce energy, and from there, food moves up the food chain. But at depths beyond 1,000 meters, there is no longer enough light for this process. There is no continuous source of new energy. All that's left are the things that fall from above. Scientists call this marine snow, tiny pieces of organic matter that slowly sink from the upper parts of the ocean. It could be leftover plankton, fish waste, or tiny debris from dead organisms. As it travels downward, it is gradually consumed by other creatures. So by the time it reaches the very bottom, there is very little left. Sometimes a bigger gift falls down, a dead fish, squid, or even a whale. When this happens, it becomes the center of life for a long time, because many species simultaneously depend on a sudden source of food. In this kind of system, food is neither regular nor predictable. So life here has to adjust to long periods of waiting, sudden feasts, and extreme scarcity. There are places that are like oases in the middle of a desert, but instead of water and plants, life here revolves around scarce food and a slower pace of life. In these conditions, speed is not the key to survival, but rather efficiency and endurance. Here, organisms that grow slowly but live long dominate. The reason? Because food is so scarce, it's more advantageous to have a body that doesn't use up energy quickly. For example, the giant isopod can survive for a long time without food. Because of its low metabolic rate and ability to store energy in its body, the Greenland shark is even more extreme. It can have a very long lifespan and takes a very long time to reach the reproductive stage. In this kind of world, time doesn't move quickly. It's stretched out. It's like a life on pause, just waiting for the next opportunity. This kind of slow life strategy also gives another advantage: avoiding competition. You're not racing against the fast cycles of surface ecosystems. Instead, you have a different rhythm. It's steadier, longer, and the use of resources is more controlled. But it's not just about food and time. It's also about protection. In the midnight zone, there are fewer predators compared to the shallow sea. And those who are here are usually ambush specialists. They rely on surprise instead of chasing. There's the anglerfish that uses light to lure in prey. There's the dragonfish that can operate in complete darkness. And there's the gulper eel that can suddenly swallow its prey whole. Despite this, larger bodies are harder to penetrate or attack. The giant isopod, for example, has a tough shell like armor. Meanwhile, the Japanese spider crab uses its size and long legs as defense and intimidation. In the deeper parts of the ocean, there are creatures that not only grow larger, but also become dominant in their world. There are giant squids that have been reported to go head-to-head with sperm whales, leaving scars on each other's bodies. Here, size is not just a defense, it also becomes a weapon. Even some jellyfish benefit from this form. Because of their enormous size and the toxins in their bodies, almost no predators attempt to eat them. In the deep sea, not being worth eating is a form of protection. According to the predation release hypothesis, when there are fewer predators, the pressure to stay small and fast disappears. In shallow waters, you need to hide and escape. But in the deep sea, where hiding places are limited and slow movement is normal, being large becomes a more viable survival strategy. Not all species grow big either. Many remain small and almost invisible. This means there are two main strategies for survival. Either become extremely large or become almost invisible. Another important factor is the stability of the deep sea. For millions of years, it has hardly changed. The same cold darkness and pressure. Because of this, evolution is slow, so there are species that have hardly changed since the time of the dinosaurs, like the giant isopod. There is also less competition compared to the surface ocean. That's why there is more space for other species to evolve. At the same time, many deep-sea giants use a K-selection strategy. Fewer, but more developed offspring. Like some large fish that produce fewer eggs, but those eggs have a higher chance of survival. Stories about sea monsters were only considered legends. But through scientific study, it gradually emerged that some of these stories actually have a basis. Giant squids, for example, are rarely seen alive. Most of the time, people only find specimens that have washed up on shore or were caught in nets, damaged, deformed, and no longer in their natural form. Because of this, they end up looking scarier than they actually are. But even so, their large eyes and tough beaks that can cut through flesh are still noticeable. Instead of seeing them as monsters, it's more accurate to view them as products of extreme adaptation to a world with almost no light, freezing temperatures, and extremely high pressure. But what's even more surprising is not the creatures themselves, but the place where they live. Less than 5% of the deep ocean has actually been explored by humans. This means that there's a much larger part of the ocean that we don't know about than what we do know. With every descent of a submersible, new species, new behaviors, and new ecosystems are discovered. From this perspective, old legends about the sea aren't entirely accurate in detail, but they capture the feeling. There really are creatures in the depths that are not ordinary and are hard to explain to people who haven't seen them. The deep sea doesn't follow the same rules as the surface world. A strategy that's effective in the coral reef might be useless in the abyss. Here, survival depends on extreme adaptation. It could be being extremely large, almost invisible, having a very slow metabolism, or having an incredibly tough body. Until now, science still doesn't clearly understand why some species grow extremely large while others remain small. It's also not certain whether there is a limit to the maximum size of deep-sea organisms, or if this will continue to change as we discover more. With every new exploration, more questions arise than answers. There are new giant squids being found, amphipods in trenches that were once thought to be lifeless, and jellyfish that are even bigger than researchers expected. The ocean is the largest ecosystem on the planet, and the deep sea is the part of it that we understand the least. Despite technology, it remains almost unexplored compared to other places, even those on other planets. That's why, until now, the question remains open as to what else is down there, what kinds of creatures exist that we haven't seen yet, and what kinds of survival strategies are possible in such an environment. And in the silence of the deep sea continues to show that life is broader, more adaptive, and more mysterious than anything humans have previously imagined. At the end of everything we've learned about the deep sea, one simple truth remains. There is still more that we don't know than what we do know. The depths of the ocean are not a dead space, nor are they simply a dark part of the world. It is a dynamic ecosystem where life constantly adapts to conditions that are almost impossible for ordinary people to comprehend. Here, survival is not based on speed or strength alone, but on the ability to wait, conserve, and persist, even when opportunities are rare. On the surface of the sea, we are used to the day-night cycle, daily weather, and rapid changes in the environment. But in the deep sea, these factors are almost non-existent. The cold is nearly constant. The darkness is permanent. The pressure is constant. And because of this, life here is not rushed by change. Instead, it is gradually shaped by stability that lasts for millions of years. This kind of environment is the reason why evolution here also takes a different course. It is not a rapid transformation. It is gradual refinement. It's like slowly shaping a form that can endure the most extreme conditions on the planet. With every new dive by scientists, the realization deepens that the deep sea is far from being fully explored. In fact, we know even less than a little. Only a small part of it has actually been explored by humans. This means that every new mission under the sea is not just a confirmation of what we already know, but the uncovering of another layer of what we still don't understand. And here, the bigger picture becomes clear. The ocean is not just a part of Earth. It is the largest living system with its own rhythm, its own laws, and its own way of continuing. The creatures here are not monsters, and they are not just mere coincidences. They are examples of how far life can go when it is forced to adapt to the most unfamiliar conditions. And in the silence of the deep, a world continues to exist that we do not see every day. A world that does not stop, does not rush, and still has not fully revealed itself to us. To this day, it remains a reminder that the greatest part of our planet is not on the surface, but beneath it. Silent, deep, and continuously hiding answers that we are only slowly discovering.